Yeah, this is episode 44, okay? And episode 44 of all of my solo episodes on Chit Chat with Chan. However, episode 25 of this year in 2026. And we are growing at a pace that is hitting records. And I'm so grateful, but I'm also freaking out. I'm so excited. And yeah, I feel like now when I press record, knowing that there's a lot of people listening to the show, I'm getting nervous, which is really interesting. It's like one of those things where I have really gotten over that hump in my content, like in my social media content, but because I feel like this podcast is still a little bit new for me, I'm trying to work through the hump of okay, there's people listening. Now it's like it really matters what I'm saying. Really crazy experience. But anyway, thank you so much for being here and thank you for being interested in the show and thank you for, I get DMs from you guys like I'm a Chit Chat with Chan listener and it just makes my day. It just makes me so happy. I get really excited to record these episodes. And so with episode 44, I'm going to talk about something that is going to sound extremely simple, but it's going to absolutely change the way that you approach your content entirely. And this is going to be built off of like if I had to start from ground zero and I had no audience, I had a business in my mind and I knew that I wanted to create content to get visibility in order to basically turn my visibility into an asset. This is what I would be doing and this is what I would be focusing on from ground zero. So this conversation is basically going to be talking about how you capture attention in your content, in your social media content. And obviously, in order to capture attention, like think about anywhere, whether it's on social media or not, but especially social media, if you want to capture attention, you have to be interesting. However, when I say that, I will also add that the fastest way to not be interesting, the absolute fastest way, is to try to be interesting. You cannot try to manufacture being interesting in ways that make you just kind of awkward or weird or like off-putting. We can feel when it's when it's a show or it's forced. Okay? I know. Bear with me here. We're going to get to some good juice, but when you try to be interesting, it does give this underlying energy of like we feel like you're performing because you feel like we it's like gosh, go back to when you were interested in boys when we were in high school. Okay. Like I always had a crush on someone and I swear I was interested in them until they like started doing weird stuff or like they, tried to be interesting back. And then I was like, okay, this isn't translating. Like this isn't working for me. This feels like I don't like it. um, and it's because the fact that they were trying to be interesting felt like inauthenticity almost. And when you try to be interesting in your content, your audience, whether that's a small audience or a big audience, it doesn't matter. They can feel that performance from you. And I'm going to tell you right now that they're not always going to be able to articulate what that thing is. So it might come across as hate or whatever, but they can feel it from you in the same way that you can feel when someone starts telling you what you want to hear versus telling you something that they actually believe that you need to hear. There's a big difference. So the content that is extremely interesting, it stops people in their scrolling tracks. And let's just say it's the type of content that gets saved, it gets screenshotted, it makes somebody DM you and tell you, like, this changed my entire perspective on blah, blah, blah. I need to hire you. That content is never going to be manufactured or engineered in order to try and be interesting to people. It will be made by somebody, you as the creator, who was so interested in that topic that you're speaking about that you couldn't keep it to yourself. So that's what we're talking about today, because there's a big difference between being interesting and being interested. And when you can switch everything into being an interested individual, your life is going to forever change. So in today's episode 44, I want to talk about that difference because I think it's the key. It's the major key to building an obsessed audience. And when I say obsessed audience, let me just clarify this. I'm not talking about followers that are following you or obsessed with you. I'm talking about an obsessed audience that is obsessed with your mission, with your movement. They don't worship you. They want to join the movement. They want to join the battlefield with you and fight the war, whatever war it is that you're fighting. So with that being said, if you want to create an obsessed audience, this is going to be a really good episode. Here's what I would say is happening for most female founders creating content. I see this constantly because I've worked now with hundreds of women. Actually, I need to count how many women. I don't know the answer to that, but I will do that for the next episode. But I've witnessed that these women will sit down to make their content. And the first question that she'll ask herself is, what do I post or what do I say today? And with that, with those singular questions, we've already lost. Like it's over, it's game over. Because that question is asking the content to come from nowhere. It's you want to pull the content out of thin air when you're asking those questions. You want to pull it from a blank page, a blank canvas, or you start to look for like the trends. What are other people talking about? What did so and so post? Like maybe I should talk about what they're talking about. And you're pulling ideas and you're pulling content from something that feels a little bit strategic. And no one likes a calculated leader, okay? So the question that builds the obsessed audience before you create content is way different. It is not what should I post or what do I need to say today? It's quite literally very simple. And it is, what have I been thinking about lately? What did I figure out this week? What did I Google this week? What did I watch a YouTube video on? What changed how I see something? What have I been learning that I cannot stop thinking about? Now, here's the thing where this gets extremely meta because those questions need to apply to your overall niche. If you're not interested in your niche, then you're in the wrong niche. All I do all day long, and the people who are closest to me know this about me, but like I have bought so many content courses, like so many, just because I'm fascinated by content, not because I want to steal what people are creating. I think there's always room to improve when it comes to content. And I'm obsessed with my niche, which is content. I'm obsessed with learning more about it. I'm constantly learning more and more and more because I'm interested. And so when I sit down to think about the question, what did I figure out this week? My content is endless. It's extremely simple. And when I see this happen, I've realized that most of these female creators who are leaders, they try to create this content before they've done the deep thinking. And that's where we go wrong because the thinking is the content. The ideas that you generate when you are trying to make content, when you're curious, when you're studying something, when you're testing something, when you're experimenting with something, and then it surprises you or you feel like something has clicked inside of you, those are the moments when your best content comes to life. And you just have to be paying attention to those moments. That's what this requires. So if I give you like a framework for this, if I give you a sequence, because I do believe there is one, of course, I already said this, but it starts with being interested. Like you have to be extremely obsessed privately. So nobody is watching you and you are interested in this thing. You are studying it. You are trying to find answers. I literally all day long, I'm plugging into ChatGPT questions about things that I want to know more about in terms of content. And it's not even specific to content. Like you guys know, or at least if you've been around for a little bit, you know that I don't approach content in a way of like, how can I make my hook stronger? How can I do this? Like if my question is, okay, I want to make a better hook, then my mind immediately goes to, what is a hook? Why does a hook matter? Like those are the questions that I'm asking. That's my interest. And so those are the questions that you can ask according to your niche. And it's not thinking to yourself, what does the algorithm want today? What does my audience want today? It's not going to feel like you're creating content that seems strategic. It's literally, what are you actually learning right now? What are you testing in your own business and brand, in your own life, with your own clients? What has surprised you? What have you changed your mind about recently? And that's where all of this starts, is in the part of your life that has not made it into your content yet. You're waiting for it. I don't know what you're waiting for, but you're waiting for it to be polished, maybe. Like you're waiting for it to sound more like you've arrived at something versus saying, like, here's what I learned this week, or like, you don't even have to preface it with that statement. But anyway, after you have done your research and you started, asking these questions, from there, you develop perspective. The power of perspective cannot be underestimated in your content. And I will be so crystal clear about what I mean when I say the word perspective, because it is not the same as the word opinion. Opinion is like hot takes. It's like what you think about something. It's right versus wrong almost. Perspective is what you've earned the right to say because you've stayed curious long enough to actually figure it out. You've stayed curious long enough to figure it out. And you don't just sit around and watch content that has information all over it. Like, you're not going to sit around and consume information. That's not you. You process it. And that's what gives you perspective, because you question it. You run it against what you've already known to be true. You test it. You experiment, and you decide what you actually believe, which creates the perspective. And then what comes out of that process is quite literally something that nobody else could say in the same way that you've said it. No one can take away your perspective. No one can even replicate it, because nobody has lived your exact version of being interested in what you are interested in. And that's perspective. And perspective is the raw material of the most powerful content that you could ever make. So if you make the distinction of, okay, I'm going to introduce you to something that I've been thinking about a lot before I get into that, because I think there is a type of content that almost nobody, it's very rare, nobody is making, and it truly is the type, in my opinion and in my experience, this is my perspective here, I'm practicing what I preach here, that this is the type of content that will build the most obsessed audience. And you have so there's educational content. Let's just, I'm not talking about educational content, but let me tell you what educational content is. It's basically like, I know something and here's the information. It's very useful. It's also very forgettable. It's just like useful information. Then there is lifestyle content where you're like, here's my life, watch me. Here's my, whatever. It doesn't build, it might build like some sort of personality, but it doesn't build the authority. And then the one piece of content that I believe builds the most obsessed audience is teaching content. You becoming a teacher in your content. And teaching content is different from both educational and lifestyle content. Teaching content actually takes your perspective, the thing that you have earned through your own curiosity. I was going to say inquisitiveness, but I don't know if that's a word. You've earned this perspective through your curiosity and through reflection. And then you are able to share it in your content in a way that actually shifts how your audience thinks. You change people's thoughts. So you don't change what they know, you change how they think. There's a very big difference. And this is why I would say people try to tell you to speak to the what versus the how. It's not because you're supposed to gatekeep and hold those things back and like put it behind a paywall. It's because content becomes interesting when you change how someone thinks versus just giving them the answers to something. Change how they think. And that's very activating. And when you can create that type of content that makes someone stop in their tracks as they're scrolling past you and they literally say, hold on a second, I've been looking at this or thinking about this completely wrong. That is teaching. When someone applies what you've said in your content and it actually changes something for her, that is teaching. When she comes back to your content to see what you've figured out next because the last thing that you shared absolutely rocked her world, that is teaching. The goal is not to inform with information. It's not even to entertain. It is to shift. And that shift can only happen when you've actually done the thinking first. So you can't perform this. You can't fake this. So the part that I think is really going to change how you think about content long-term, because if you're listening to me, you're probably in this mindset of, okay, I need to become a teacher. I need to teach all of my perspectives on my niche and I need to talk about my business. Hold on a second. This is how you're going to think about content long-term, because what I'm describing is not a content strategy. It is a way of being. And I call it the evolution. This is quite literally why I named my content experience The Evolution, my content membership. And the evolution is simply this. You are a curious person. You are always learning things. You are developing perspective, and then you document that publicly in your content. So then your evolution becomes your strongest asset. And that is the way that I approach teaching personal brand. So let me just make this make sense with an example. I need to think of an analogy. Let's say that you discover a technique for cleaning carpets. Yes, cleaning carpets, okay? And you've discovered this technique and it works dramatically better than the method that you used to know or that you think everyone knows. So you share that perspective and you teach it. And you're not teaching it as like this trivia, but you're teaching it as this shift of like your content would sound like, here's why the thing that you've been doing to clean your carpets is actually not working. It's working against you. And here's what actually works. You see how that is more perspective rich. It's not, here's the 3 steps to clean a stain out of your carpet. It's totally different. And so your audience actually learns something because they feel called and activated to it. But then, because you are genuinely curious about carpets, this is your niche, you're a carpet coach, you keep going. Like you're not done at just, okay, I've cleaned this one spot out of my carpet. You keep experimenting. And then next month, your content on that same topic of cleaning carpets is much richer. It's much more specific. It's much more nuanced because you actually went deeper when nobody was watching you. And so when you went deeper when no one was watching you, and then you come back a month later to create content again, that on that same topic, that content is now evolved because you evolved. The content is not the point. The content is not the objective. The evolution is the objective. The content is this public documentation that there's evolution happening behind the scenes within you. So if we talk about what makes this extremely powerful, the evolution in your content is it really compounds. Like you bring people along for the journey. And I'm going to tell you right now, the longer you can hold someone's attention, the quicker they are to invest in you, whether that's time, energy, money, doesn't matter. The audience that finds you today, when you start documenting your evolution, they're going to get the 1.0 version of your perspective on something. But because you never stopped learning about that something and you never shut up about it, the version that they get from you in 6 months is so much richer. It feels earned, and they've been along for the journey with you. So they're loyal. They are ride or die. It feels like what you're talking about 6 months from today is extremely specific. It's deeper. And you become over time the person who keeps getting better at the thing that you care about. And you put that on display. And I'm going to tell you what, getting better, improvement, progression, that's extremely contagious, extremely addictive. The right people that you actually want to lead and that want to be led by you, the people who are going to meet you halfway in the work and not be complainers, they're not going to default on payments, they're not going to blame you for anything. They're going to be obsessed with your mission. Those type of people are obsessed with the women who keep getting better. It's true. Like they cannot get enough of it. So when it comes to that, I actually have so much to say about this, and I will never shut up about this. I've talked about it a few times. I have to talk about this money piece, which is like how I ask for my hair to get done. I'd like the money pieces in the front, please. But I want to talk about the money piece because I think for a lot of you, I know for a lot of you that the reason you are making content is to build this business and this brand into whether it is that you have offers, you want to do brand collabs, you want to speak on stages, whatever it may be. You are creating content to make money, to build an income, to build a life that is different than the current one that you have. And I'm going to tell you right now, from lived experience, you have the sequence backwards, backwards. People will pay you in their attention before they ever pay you with an asset, which is money. Attention is the very first currency. Visibility is the very first currency. And it is only earned by people who are paying attention to themselves. Yep, that's it. You can only earn attention from other people when you are paying attention to yourself. And that requires you to focus on your own learning, your own evolution, your own curiosity. So the objective of your content cannot be, how do I make money? The objective has to be, how fast can I, number one, evolve, and how fast can I document that evolution? Because when you do that, you become you become a genuinely curious person who is learning, developing perspective, and teaching what you discover. And the people who want to pay you, they will find you because you can't avoid it. It's inevitable. It's a byproduct. And they'll find you specifically because of this. And it's not going to be because you optimize your content, but it's because your perspective is yours and yours only. And that is extremely interesting. Nobody else on this planet, even if they're going through something similar, or they're teaching something similar, or they're representing something similar, not a single soul is having your exact experience of being interested in what you are interested in. So I think this is your sign. Like, stop trying to be interesting and start being interested. The more that you study your craft, the more that you refine your craft and then put that into your content as you build it, as you strengthen it, the more that you will create this obsessed audience. And the income follows that. I will say, like, generic content, you might have some passive followers. Okay. Like, I know I have a lot of peers that have very generic content and they make a ton of money. But here's the thing. What I know about them is they're building relationships in the DMs, or they're holding sales calls, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's the model that you want to have, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want that. I'm not interested in that. I want my content to change lives. I want my content to represent my reputation in a way that I put my head on my pillow at night and I'm proud AF of, like, damn, I'm killing it. Like, this feels really good. I want my philosophies, my theories, my teachings to be scaled at a massive level. So teaching content for me builds people who almost feel like they owe you something. And I don't do that intentionally. But when you teach in your content in a way that is so specific to you and your experiences and your perspective, people who consume your content, they feel like they owe you something because you shifted the way that they think. That's not manipulation. That's you just literally, like, being of service. I think it's like the law of reciprocity or something like that. But when I actually put this on Threads the other day because I thought this was really interesting and it totally flopped, which I'm okay with. But I asked the question, like, if you could only follow people who change the way you think, how many people would you be following? If you could only follow people who put out content that changed your thoughts, how many people would you be following? When someone's content changes how she sees her work, she sees her life, she sees her whatever it is, and she doesn't just like to post, she applies it, she's going to come back to see what you figured out next. They're going to literally open their phone and search your name and be like, what did she post today? I'm so interested. And then she's also going to tell people about you. She is going to become, without any funnel, without any launch strategy, like an evangelist for you. Because you didn't just give her the information and the step-by-step and the tips and the tricks. You gave her a new way of seeing something, a new way of thinking about something. That is an obsessed audience. And you will build this one perspective at a time. So even when you are, this is the last thing I'm going to say because I don't want this to be too lengthy, but even when you are thinking about creating personal content, so there's the leadership evolution and there's the personal evolution. Those are the two things that I teach inside of the Evolution Content Membership. The personal evolution, since we just kind of talked about the leadership evolution, where you are literally evolving your craft behind the scenes and documenting that, the personal evolution isn't much different, but it kind of is. So in the personal evolution, you are still teaching, but you're not saying things like let's say I'm documenting my evolution of 10,000 steps a day. I wouldn't come at this and say, like, I am walking 10,000 steps a day. Here's why you should walk 10,000 steps a day. That is not authenticity. That is not teaching. That's actually, like, really weird. I don't know why people do that. The evolution, the teaching, the perspective is, here's why I decided to walk 10,000 steps a day. Here's what I was feeling. And here's what triggered me to make this decision. That perspective, when you are able to, and that's just one piece of the 10,000 steps a day, but when you're able to document that, you start to shift people's way of thinking about why they're not walking 10,000 steps a day. And you see how this is like a trickle effect, a ripple effect, not a trickle effect. But okay, so you now you talk about here's what triggered my decision to walk 10,000 steps a day, and then you get into, okay, it's been a month. I've walked 10,000 steps a day. Here's like here's how I show up on the days that I don't want to, or like whatever that may be. Like you're actually documenting the experience of what you're going through. And that is teaching content from your own evolution. It's massively powerful. And that is how you build a personal brand as a female founder. It's not just about teaching what you know. Nobody cares what you know until they know how much you care. And that doesn't mean care about them. That means how much you care about your craft. That's huge. So if you like, again, this is literally why I named my content membership The Evolution, because it's a philosophy. The philosophy is be curious, do the work on yourself, be aware of yourself, develop the perspective, teach that shift, document it publicly, get better, repeat. And that's what we do inside of this membership. And I'm actually right now, I'm refining every single lesson inside of the Evolution content membership. I'm doing some crazy things behind the scenes in my business right now because I'm adding so much fuel, so much gasoline to the Evolution. It's going to be absolutely insane. It would be a perfect time for you to join. But anyway, I want you to know, like, the Evolution content membership is not a content strategy program in the traditional sense. It is literally a space where you will be taught to become the kind of person whose content naturally builds this obsessed audience from who you are, basically, from who you are on the inside, that no one else could copy this from you. It cuts through the noise. It helps you stand apart. It makes you unique AF. You have done the thinking probably. We just need to pedestal the thinking. We need to, again, we need to blow up the thinking. We need to make thinking prioritized. And then we need to put it into your content. When you become committed to that curiosity, when you understand that the information that you have cannot just stay in your brain, you cannot gatekeep this. It belongs in your content. And your content belongs in the world. At that moment, you will take the F over. You will literally take over the world. You will take over the social media world in your niche, in your space. You will become well-known, well-respected, and well-paid just for being you. So if you have been creating content in a way that feels like it's just not working, you feel frustrated, you don't know what to say, you are like something's missing, it's like falling flat, like you're in the production, like you're consistent, you are creating content, but it's not landing, then this is definitely the thing that's missing. I could look at anyone that I know, or like even people that I'm watching, and again, this is just because I'm obsessed with my craft. And when I watch them and I stare at them and I'm like, man, that's a special person. Like, that's a special woman, but she's not being seen for how special she is or how brilliant she is because she's missing the evolution. That is literally the thing that I would give her as a solution. And it doesn't have anything to do with the better hook or more content or some sort of like posting strategy of here's the types and the formats. It's going to come from curiosity, perspective, and teaching. And that is where, again, the Evolution is where we build that. So I will drop the link to the Evolution in the show notes here if you're interested in learning more about that. But at the end of the day, I started this episode by telling you that the fastest way to be interesting in your content is to be interested, not to try and be interesting, but to be interested. And I mean that with my full mother freaking chest. Your audience does not need you to be interesting. They need you to be interested in your topic, in your own growth, in the questions that you haven't answered for yourself yet. And that curiosity is your content. That perspective it becomes your leadership and your authority. And that teaching is what will build the thing in your content that people cannot get away from. They cannot stop coming back to. All right. Go be interested. Yay. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for being here. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Have the best day ever.